Hi, everyone. This is a crypto panel. We are here to discuss the consumer expectations and why the industry should lean in. As we all know, there is an astonishing growth of cryptocurrency adoption around the world. As of 2021, there is an estimated global crypto ownership rate of an average of 3.9%. That is over 300 million crypto users worldwide, and this number is just growing. We've seen the growth of crypto amongst the crypto curious and the others. There are opportunities and there are challenges. And I am here today to discuss with you with a group of panelists about the challenges, the opportunities, the demands, and what's going on in crypto industry in Canada. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the group of panelists that I have with me today. I have with me Sukhmani Dev, the Senior Vice President of Digital Product Management at Mastercard. She's coming with us from North America. She's representing North America. I also have Louis Davis. He's a Director of Market Intelligence with Moneris Solutions. And I do have Eric Richmond, the Chief Operating Officer at Coinsquare. I am your moderator, Ellie Zolghadr. I'm a Director of Products at Mastercard for Digital Solutions. So thank you all for joining us in this panel. Decentralized finance and crypto, it seems to be a very hot topic. From your respective clients' perspective, is crypto in demand in Canada? That is my first questions that I would like to take to the panel, and I would love to hear, Eric, your perspective from Coinsquare.
Yeah, definitely. So Coinsquare, for the ones who aren't familiar with, is a leading Canadian digital asset exchange. So to buy and sell digital assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum and others. And the demand we've seen, especially in 2021, was an unprecedented year in terms of prices. Price appreciation, and which led to a significant amount of increase in customer demand and retail demand. But we have seen an increase in institutional demand and significant amount of players looking at the space, investing in the space on the crypto side, but also looking at blockchain from a level of, okay, how can this help the payment space in particular? What can we leverage from a technology perspective? And you see a lot of, especially continuing in 2022. And as people have probably seen, the prices have kind of leveled off. You really have this building phase of 2021 was a great year for a lot of people in the crypto space, but now it's an opportunity to build that infrastructure, continue to increase the adoption for institutional investors into the space, which also includes people coming in from different industries, such as Mastercard and Moneris, who I'm on the panel with here today. So it's great to see that continued adoption, and that we expect to continue to see that adoption moving forward. Crypto's, I think at this point, definitely here to stay. Just how do we leverage this technology, which is still really in the early innings here.
Yeah. It's definitely something interesting to watch out and see it flourish. Louis, over to you. Do you see demand from your perspective, from Moneris' perspective on the crypto topic?
Well, Ellie, it's an interesting environment. I think it should be noted that as the largest acquirer in the country and payment processor, we have lots of merchants across the country. And to be quite honest, there isn't a lot of demand from a payment perspective, and I'm less about Eric's perspective or Eric's comment around the buying and selling of crypto. I'm more focused on the actual use of crypto as a payment method. We've noticed, and based on some data we've looked at, there are about 1,000 ATMs across the country that are configured to actually allow the consumer to buy and sell crypto at that ATM using their cash. As well, there are probably about a little under 1,000 merchants in terms of information we've seen that are look like they're actually have the capability today of accepting crypto. With, I think the last number I saw, just under 3 million, according to StatScan, 3 million merchants across the country. That 1,000 is a very small number, but there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of activity at least in the press, that we see on a day-to-day basis for crypto. So I think that interest will continue to climb, and I think the issue that we need to overcome is the education of our merchants in order for them to understand what's involved in order to, take advantage of this type of payment option.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's an evolving technology. There are lots of interesting roads ahead of us and lots of challenges. I know there's a lot of initiatives on the crypto front from Mastercard's perspective. Suk, over to you. Can you walk us through some of those initiatives?
Sure, Ellie, thanks. I would just start by saying that crypto is an interesting space. In 2020, the market cap was around 345 billion. By 2021, it grew to over 2 trillion. So it's definitely not going away, here to stay. We're seeing 87 countries, including Canada, across the globe that represent almost 90% of global GDP, are exploring what's called the central bank digital currency, or CDBCs. So it's a paradigm shift compared to where we were, say, 5 years ago with this technology. So in terms of Mastercard and how we see this ecosystem evolving, we think that there is opportunity for this new innovation to coexist with the traditional financial institutions, and for both to benefit from each other. And the way we are putting that in motion is in three distinct categories, some more near term, some more futuristic. And in the near term space, as people are moving on to crypto assets or holdings, they sometimes do want to spend it. So we've launched a crypto card program that
I think her screen is frozen. We'll wait for Suk to come back. I know that she has a lot to say in terms of what initiatives Mastercard has been up to in terms of like bringing some structure and the infrastructure and the rails to offer crypto, for the financial institutions, whether it's on as a digital asset, whether it's on the cyber intelligence and fraud perspective. I know there are a lot of initiatives that Mastercard is working on, but it's a new technology, and with itself, I'm sure there are a lot of challenges that we would need to address, work together. But at this point, I would like to see from your perspectives, what are some of these challenges that you're facing? I would like to hear what themes of challenges that you're facing. I know there are consumer demands, but at the same time, there's a lot that we would need to work on. Louis, you touched on the education piece of that. If you can elaborate on some of the challenges that we would need to address as an industry, that would be great.
Yeah, as an industry, I think, as I said, there's a lot of news items and information floating around on crypto. However, I think the typical consumer doesn't really have a good understanding of what crypto is, how it works, what the pros and cons are, the risks are. I think the same goes for merchants as well. So I think as an ecosystem, I think we all have to come together to create a better sense of how this whole works. How do we differentiate the asset form that crypto is versus the actual financial instrument that we've typically been used to in terms of cash, debit, and credit. So I think, to me, that's the first objective, is to create some education and awareness around what crypto is for our merchants, and I think that's of critical importance. I think there's another area that we need to manage as well. I think we've all seen a lot of information about the volatility of crypto, and I think the onset and growing demand for stablecoin will help this particular set of payment circumstances or payment activity. And so that's another area that I think we can put some effort in to strengthen our ability to get this into the hands of the merchant or the merchant to consumer exchange in terms of payment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Suk, while you stepped away, we're just touching on the challenges. There's a lot of education that needs to happen at different layers, like consumers, merchants, banks. I feel like there's a lot to be done, but at the same time, there's a lot of demand. I know it's a hot topic of discussions. Just going back to you and the initiatives that you were just briefing us on for Mastercard.
Yeah, so apologies for the drop. That you're absolutely right. There's a lot of challenges. There's challenge of education. And as I was saying, our three-pronged strategy, one is about making it easier for you to spend it if you want, using our cards program, which converts it into fiat, and you can spend it anywhere Mastercard is accepted. The other two initiatives, more longer term. One, we did announce last year that we will be accepting select stablecoins on our network. So more to come on that, but that's another prong of the strategy. And the third one actually ties to what you were saying about education. We are working with central banks around the globe, helping them make their path forward in terms of evaluating central bank digital currencies. We have a testing platform that's available for them, and we're working on educating them where needed, and then also working with regulators throughout the world in helping them understand the space better. Because from a challenges standpoint, since you guys were talking about that, what is really needed is clarity and consistency. And that's needed across the globe from a regulatory standpoint, so that more innovation can happen in a systematic manners. Financial institutions know what risks they can take. Consumers know that they're protected, and everything happens in a manner that is conducive for the growth of the ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of things that I want to double click on that. But Eric, to you, like I know Coinsquare has been engaged with regulators to just make clarity and make some movements around, what would be some of the standards when it comes to crypto. Can you elaborate on that, or some of the other challenges that we need to address as an industry when it comes to crypto?
Yeah, well, I mean, education obviously is really important. There's a ton of resources out there, podcasts, books, articles that will explain crypto. And I think it's important that, people, everyone educates themselves around the technology in the space. From a regulatory perspective, I think, just speaking specifically on Canada here for a second, there has been a little more regulatory clarity over the past, year and a half. A company like Coinsquare, for example, which is a digital asset exchange, or crypto trading platform, as the securities regulators in Canada have defined it, does have a regulatory framework. Now, that regulatory clarity has helped, but it's still being implemented. And what I mean by that is, like, there are a few platforms now that have received their temporary exemption from those registration until they get their full IROC dealer registration, which is great to see in the market. And there's going to be that continued adoption for it. I mean, Coinsquare, we're hopefully to be the first IROC dealer to get that approval. We're kind of jumping the step of actually becoming a temporary exempted dealer, and that should be in the next few months here. And then that regulatory really helps to build other products. So another business I'm associated with is a digital asset custodian. It's the first trust company licensed to custody digital assets in Canada. It's called Tetra Trust Company, and we built that business because we're looking at the requirements and the laws in Canada, and saw that there's a need for independent qualified custodian in Canada. And so, we brought that to the market and launching that product. But regulatory clarity has now happened in, and it's starting to happen in stable coins and different areas, but it's the implementation of that that's really key. It's how you can tackle that cross border, and how that interacts with the different jurisdictions. There's definitely some regulatory arbitrage occurring, even within Canada, across the different provinces. And so it's sort of sorting out some of these discrepancies and getting more clarity, in areas that's not just crypto trading platforms from a pure crypto perspective. Like, even just take the native digital asset. What is a security? What is not a security? I mean, that's been a discussion we've been having in the space now for 8 to 10 years. So we're improving, but there still is work to be done there.
Yeah, that absolutely. And I just want to close the loop on just calling out the challenges. So you mentioned the initiatives that we're working on, but what are some of the challenges that you see, specifically, like from the type of client you deal with as a network, and where does Canada stand? Like, are we a frontier? Are we where do we stand from a crypto and addressing the challenges in the crypto space?
Yeah, I think it's what I mentioned earlier, and Eric touched on as well, is clarity and consistency in regulation would help develop safer payment or financial services technologies in the space. There are legitimate risks, and keeping an eye on some of the questions in the chat that also point to these risks. that must be addressed if the use of this digital asset needs to mature and scale. There needs to be regulatory clarity. I think Eric mentioned regulatory arbitrage. So this clarity and consistency needs to happen at a global level so that entities or bad actors are not finding countries with weaker regulation and taking advantage of that. So that needs to be addressed consistently across the globe. The other challenge, as we're talking about challenge, is we're seeing fraud rates. So fraud rates are 4 times higher in crypto transactions than non-crypto transactions. And criminal entities have been using crypto to fund transfers as well. So what it means from the audience of this particular conference perspective is that financial institutions need to understand the flows, what is coming in and out of their system, how's compliance working from an anti-money laundering perspective, and all of that good stuff. But the silver line here, I would say, silver lining is that there are tools out there, there are companies out there that have developed technology that can help institutions understand these flows. So CipherTrace, a company Mastercard recently acquired, is one such example that can help FIs and institutions understand the kind of flows that are coming in and out of their system, not just on card rails, but also ACH and other rails, because CipherTrace as a company profiles over 1,200 VASPs, as they're called, in the ecosystem. So this includes exchanges and other entities that operate in the system, and closely pays attention to their KYC and how good of a controls environment that they have to be able to give guidance back to the FI on whether or not this is a good, bad, or ugly KYC practice at WASP. And then it also allows you to monitor over 900 cryptocurrencies and flows, and you can trace and track transactions, and you can see where the funds are going and flowing to. So I think using tools like that, step one, understand the flows, understand how you're being exposed and where things need to be improved. But then the good thing about understanding flows is that it also helps you or can guide you on the side of how should you think about crypto, and how should you think about offering certain services to your customers who may want it. We're seeing, again, headline grabbing topic. Lots of people want to participate in this, and then I'm sure people in the audience are thinking about how does my business dabble in this space. And I think just basically understanding flows is the first starting step in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we called out a lot of the challenges, but I would like to also take the opportunities and see what are some of the opportunities that crypto could unlock for us. Louis, maybe I would start with you.
Sure. It's really, you got to think about it as another form of payment. I think consumers and merchants want options as they, get into this ecosystem, and that's why we've seen the success of the various wallets that are in place. So it's really an opportunity for the evolution of another form of payment. So that's one opportunity. We can think of this as another area for merchants to actually leverage what they're actually doing. So if there are actually merchants who are already investing in crypto as an asset, this is an opportunity for them to grow that asset or that portfolio. Similarly, I mean, they're in business to make money, and whether it's their bank account or their investment account or their crypto account, it's all good if there's an opportunity to actually make more money or increase their profitability and their net value. So I think there's opportunity here. I think we've talked about the regulatory components. We just need to continue to work on that to make it a more sustainable and create some confidence for the merchant as they move forward with this. Along with, as I said before, the education that's actually needed to create that foundation for the merchant to feel comfortable with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, any thoughts on that? Opportunities?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is the ability to transmit payment across border without any intermediaries. It's a really powerful tool. We saw it obviously done with Ukraine and trying to raise funds. It was, I can't recall how much they ended up raising, but in the tens of millions of dollars. And what's really unique about crypto, compared to if you think about it, we have Visa, Mastercard, other payment rails that we can use online. Like the best way that it was kind of described to me, kind of like was the light bulb for me, was like, It's the ability to transfer value from one person to the other without relying on a third party in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Send an email to someone, even if you're sending them a PowerPoint deck or something or a Word document, you still have a copy of that deck on your computer. When you send crypto to someone, that's leaving, there's only one copy of that computer. So that's called the double spend problem. That's the problem it's solving. And so it's a really unique way of thinking about it, being able to transfer value from one individual to another across the world. And then a step further, what Suk talked about earlier about cipher trace and about the ability to actually track those funds, I think it makes it even more powerful because you know exactly where your funds are going. And there's these very powerful tools to be able to actually track that and to combat some of the fraudulent activity that could go on in the space. So I think there's some very large opportunities in the space, and definitely cross-border payments are for me the most exciting areas.
Yeah.
I just want to add to this something that Luis, you said, and Eric, you said. So just to answer your question, Ellie, in terms of opportunity, I think digital token networks do have the potential to support a range of benefits. There's faster settlement, there could be improved transparency, but most notably, the opportunity for programmable payments or smart contracts. So that is all very interesting, but especially on payments and cross-border. So I think for crypto to be an effective payment instrument, there are a couple of things that merchants and consumers would want. They would want stability, so price fluctuations need to be out of, you don't want to pay thousands of dollars for your coffee. There needs to be consumer protection. So how do disputes work? If somebody was wrong, how do you make that right? And then obviously it needs to be on side with regulation from a regulatory standpoint. So those are the three key principles Mastercard firmly believes that need to be upheld for this to be useful as a payment instrument. And that's the lens we're applying when we talk about enabling certain stablecoins on our network. So that's on the payment side. On the cross-border, it's an interesting topic. What I would say is that if this is being thought of as a way to reduce costs on the cross-border side, it's extremely complicated. So crypto can be a tool, but it's not a silver bullet because, in fact, G20 did an extensive study on this, and they've identified 19 building blocks that are needed to deliver cheaper and faster and most transparent cross-border payments. And a lot of them have nothing to do with technology. A lot of them actually have to do with regulatory misalignment, inconsistent data standards, or lack of identity. So those are the kind of pieces that need to be solved. Not to say crypto can't play a role, but I don't think it's a silver bullet. And that's how we're looking at the problem from a Mastercard perspective. From our perspective, cards, multi-rail or ACH or RTP rails, as well as crypto, separately or in tandem, can work together to make cross-border more interesting for all parties involved.
Yeah, that's an astonishing 19 building blocks. Most of them, or none of them have to do with technology. That is astonishing. That's definitely a challenge that we need to address. Any thoughts on that, Louis, in terms of, what Suk mentioned? You touched on crypto as a payment option. I would like to elaborate on that. So do you see an intersection between crypto and as a payment option?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, I think it's another option that we need to have in our basket for merchants. I think we have a number of challenges, though, as we talked about, to get through. So while we see that as an option that we must consider because of the growing trend and the evolution of the technology, and I'd argue that the blockchain technology is still evolving and there's some maturity here. But I think, as has been said, the cross-border opportunity, the ability for that tracing, the tracking capability of those funds and the actual transaction is of value to merchants as well as consumers, as long as they understand it. So I think it's something we at Moneris are paying attention to, and I think as a ecosystem we must pay attention to, because I think as this evolves and matures and we get the right standards and controls around the process, I think it'll be a great opportunity for us to make sure that merchants can adopt it and can take advantage of it to the best of their ability.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, because from my understanding, and Eric, maybe I can I can turn it over to you. How are the consumers reacting or basically behaving when it comes to spending their crypto assets?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely still early days. I mean, in terms of payment within the crypto ecosystem, so being used on, I'm sure the term Web3 has been thrown around a lot, or DeFi, used within those environments, obviously extensively now. Going back to the smart contracts, and that's what smart contracts enables you to be able to interact with certain decentralized finance applications. So just think like the ability to lend and borrow crypto assets from other parties without the use of an intermediary. Or there's other like Web3 projects, which are think the metaverses that people are hearing about, NFT projects where you can use your coins to buy things. So there's that, and there's definitely an explosion there. I think in terms of actually using it for payments, I think this is actually where and is where companies like Moneris and Mastercard are doing a good job of coming in and providing that ability for companies and to use crypto and to accept crypto, right? Because like ultimately at the end of the day, there still are chargeback risks and that sort of piece that needs to be dealt with. There still is if you're not using a stable coin, for example, which is pegged 1-to-1 to a fiat currency, there still is the fluctuation of price risk and how do you actually exchange those digital assets to another form of currency. So that, these solutions, I think there definitely is a role. I'm the native crypto one on this panel, but I actually do think there is a role for, companies like Mastercard and Moneris, and they're doing a fantastic job of adopting, crypto and bringing it to the masses. So, I think those are the roles that companies, like that can play and are playing. And I think we'll see a continued, adoption by those companies and continued investment.
Yeah, I just want to jump in for a sec because I think it's I want to be clear that this is not something that we're doing today. I think as we see the evolution of this technology, I think we're paying a lot of attention to it. We're actually spending a lot of time internally looking at the legal, the compliance, the risk implications in order to make sure that we are ready when it's time to start processing these types of transactions. So we rely on folks like Suk at Mastercard to help us get over those curves. And as I said, learning a lot from them as well. But we're making sure that we keep abreast of what's going on so that as this becomes quote unquote mainstream type of activity, that we're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's key. Like your knowledge and the investment for your company, even just to educate people internally at Moneris, I think is really important.
Agreed.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I know there's a lot of great initiatives between Mastercard and Moneris that are underway. Louis, can you elaborate on those initiatives a little bit?
So I want to bring one up in particular. I think Sue can elaborate on this, but one of the things that I think is enabling this type of or potentially commerce to evolve is, Mastercard is able to, present a card that's accepted everywhere Mastercard's accepted, backed by crypto. And I think that's really one of those early stages of the technology that allows the consumer and the merchant to get used to this process. And I think that's been a great thing that Mastercard has done. And I know Sue can talk a little bit more about that, but sure. That's sort of one of those stages where it helps, as I said before, that education piece, because if you're able to take, something that you have in your wallet, it's backed by the assets that you want to hold in terms of crypto, and be able to use that anywhere, I think it's a great first step for that evolution of crypto.
That's absolutely right. And that's exactly what's happening. There are different types of card programs in market, but essentially, you can spend against your crypto assets. Of course, the transaction happens in fiat. Everything is on fiat on our network currently. That's why you can use it anywhere Mastercard is accepted. But, it gives people a way to interact with the ecosystem, get more utility out of, crypto that's sitting there. So that's an interesting angle. But I think I just want to underscore what we've talked about, and I think Eric last touched on around for this to be effectively used for payments, it has to have stability. It has to have the right customer protections, and it has to be on site with regulations. So that's on the payment side. But I think some of the survey data that we see is we're seeing that people are really buying and holding. They're not really as much using it as a payment method, but they're holding on to it. And I'm sure, Eric, you see this in your numbers. There's less, nobody's going buying coffee or pizza with this. They're holding it. And if they're spending it, it tends to be within the crypto or DeFi ecosystem. There's a lot of NFTs being bought with crypto. We haven't touched on NFTs yet, but they had a big surge in popularity over the last year. So those are the kind of use cases that we're seeing people play with in these early stages. It's less of a, people have less of a desire to use it for retail payments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Eric, any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's essentially what we see. I mean, from the data perspective, we're definitely seeing an increase of the use of crypto within especially the crypto ecosystems. In terms of the adoption from using it from a payments perspective, it's coming. It's not happening overnight. I mean, I'm sure everyone here has heard of El Salvador legalizing Bitcoin tender, and in El Salvador now you can use Bitcoin to buy a coffee or something at McDonald's. Those are these payment processes are coming. I mean, one of the big areas that was problematic in the crypto space, which is still relatively being solved, is transaction fees. Right, that was always a big point of conversation. There are a few layer 2, as they call them, protocols, or Bitcoin's case, something called Lightning Network, that greatly reduces those fees to less than fractionalized pennies. But there still is, it's speed and it's cost, and I think and the price fluctuation. And, as we continue to solve in the crypto space some of those problems, which I think there are now solutions to that. There are trade-offs to them, but there are some solutions there. That's where we'll see the continued adoption of crypto use for everyday payments rather than just in the crypto space. But I think that's exactly right. I mean, clients right now are definitely looking for more of a buy and hold, and when they're using it in the DeFi space, it's just to continue to accelerate that investment of theirs. So yeah, I think it's that's kind of the next foray is definitely the payment space, which is continuing to grow, but not happening overnight.
Yeah, absolutely not happening overnight. And I know a couple of years ago, or was it last year, that Mastercard announced that they will be backing some of the cryptocurrencies on their network. Maybe, Sue, can you elaborate on that? It seems like, we need to open up the acceptance and adoption outside of the DeFi ecosystem. Anything that you can add to that from a Mastercard perspective? How can we support it? What can we support?
Yeah, I would just say payments business really comes down to choice and utility, and that choice and utility extends beyond just credit and debit, which is why we made the announcement. But now, to be precise, the announcement was that we will support certain stable coins on our network, those that meet the 3 requirements that I've talked about a few times in this around stability, consumer protection, being on right side with the regulation. So that's what we are working towards. We haven't exactly published which currencies those would be, but we are working towards a future where the network will support these natively for settlement purposes.
Mm-hmm. Regulation and legislation comes up a lot on this panel. And Eric, maybe you're the closest to that. How is the government of Canada responding to this? I know there's Project Jasper going on. Are we a frontier when it comes to legislation of crypto?
Well, I think, so I think from a regulatory perspective, enforcing the laws that are in place today, and this is my own, just for the legal disclaimer, I'm a lawyer by trade. These are my own views, not Coinsquare's views, et cetera, et cetera. But, I think, the regulators are working within the laws that were kind of given to them. And ultimately, it's up to Parliament and or Queen's Park or wherever province to change those laws for crypto to work. There have been a few member bills here and there that are looking to make some sort of change, but I do think definitely from a regulatory clarity perspective, Canada is probably falls somewhere in the middle of the spectrum in terms of providing that regulatory clarity. Some of the jurisdictions like Singapore as one prominent one, South Korea really have some defined frameworks for digital assets, and I think really that's the best way to move this industry forward, because using the laws that were kind of put in place in the 30s after during the Great Depression, right? Like it's not really practical for this new technology, but that sort of change takes time, and we know that. And you're starting to see a little bit more from members of Parliament on that topic, but we also just had a pandemic that we had to deal with. They have a lot of other things on their plate than just dealing with digital assets. So there's definitely more regulatory clarity. Canada probably falls somewhere in the middle in terms of providing that clarity. And it'll be interesting to see this continue to grow because, like we've said, this is a global technology. So it also is interesting to see how that regulatory frameworks come together, between different jurisdictions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very interesting times to be living in. And I see a lot of questions from the audience. And one thing that is keep coming up is they would like to know the value prop for consumers when it comes to crypto. Can you each give me one value prop why crypto matters to our consumers?
So
maybe go ahead.
Value prop is, as I said before, consumers who have these crypto assets in their portfolio, as has been sort of previously indicated, it's a buy and hold type of situation, right? Folks are looking for that. Given the volatility of the market, they're looking for the value of those assets to increase. But at the end of the day, once we get to a some standards around the environment and so on and so forth, there will be those assets can contribute to a formidable way of making purchases. And I think for those consumers who have these assets, I think there'll be value as we get stabilization, regulations, et cetera, around this. So that to me is a value prop, and those people who see the opportunity to invest now because they see an opportunity to increase the value of their crypto over the long haul, or maybe even the short haul, is where I see some of the value here.
Yeah, that's certainly interesting. It may have started as an investment opportunity, but like we are just peeling the layers of the onion with the payment option. So it's just definitely an interesting time to be in payments and to be in this industry. Eric, same question to you.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that statement. I think what's really unique about crypto is, comparing it to a stock or something you buy like Tesla or Microsoft stock. You can actually use that as a form of payment, which is exciting. And then there's kind of there have been a very large explosion of cards that have been issued now that they're mainly prepaid cards, but where it's used natively within some sort of exchange where you're just easily transferring your crypto into fiat, and then that fiat is on the card that you can then spend. So that's like one unique way that's happening. And there have been a few ways that they've bridged that gap to extend a little bit of credit using your crypto as collateral, which is pretty cool from like an investment perspective. And then the other piece of it as well is there are merchants that do accept these assets. There are companies, like there's a company in the US called BitPay that essentially is providing a service like this really from early days, which is they accept the ability to accept crypto, and then that crypto gets automatically converted into fiat. So I think one of the exciting from a value perspective, in addition to all the things we've chatted about today, is the ability to leverage your investments in that sort of way, if it is an instant, right? And then it slowly becomes more of a payment and a medium of exchange. So yeah, that for me would be is kind of the value prop for crypto in the payment space.
Yeah, certainly interesting. And for audiences who are just joining us, some of the value props and the uniqueness of crypto and what it can do. From an investment perspective, from a different payment option, it's all about the choice and then the cross-border capabilities that it could unlock. Suk, glad to have you back. We are just talking about, one unique value prop of crypto, like that you can point out to.
I think, like we said, programmability of payments. To me, that's the most interesting angle here. That's interesting and unique, and not something that we've seen before at this scale. And we're also seeing a lot of innovation that is happening. That is, we talked about NFTs briefly. That is something new that has come into existence, and its interplay with e-commerce is an interesting one. Now you have the ability to really have an asset that can only have one representation, and it moves from me to Eric to Luis, and it's not copies that we're leaving behind. It's just that one unique asset. So it could have some very interesting potential. If we wanted to, I wanted to give my concert tickets away to Luis in that manner, and that's a very interesting use case. If I needed to, couldn't be on this flight or train or whatever, and I could trade off those tickets, auction those tickets. Those are some interesting use cases that could unlock the interplay of blockchain as a technology fundamentally, and then crypto has a role to play in that. So
yeah. No, certainly really interesting thoughts. There are comments around the tax implications. I know there's just, it would be an ongoing conversation for years to come, but definitely very interesting topic. There is one other comment. I would like to see if there is any responses to it, but how are our financial institutions in the country reacting to crypto? We talked about, right now it's a funding mechanism to use your accounts to fund your crypto activities. And I know there are a lot of solutions that we touched on in terms of helping the financial institutions in terms of, just assessing these kind of activities on their end. There is this question, what's the case of crypto at the financial institutions for cross-border payments? Is there any thoughts on that we can answer this audience?
I think we touched on cross-border already, but what I would say on the FI side, what we're generally seeing is that the first foray is a card-based program, typically allowing people to spend, and this is more fintechs, not traditional financial institutions just yet, but people are using their bank to fund their crypto activity, which is an interesting thing because that means that the funds are leaving the banking ecosystem and going to these other fintechs or exchanges and things like that. So if I'm a bank, that's something to think about. Consumers trust their banks a lot, and survey data shows that they do want their banks to, if their bank offered the ability to buy, sell, or hold crypto, they would be open to or more amenable to dabbling into the crypto space. But I think that's, none of us are from traditional FI on this call. So it'd be interesting to get that perspective and see how comfortable they're feeling. But till then, like the tools that we mentioned, CipherTrace can help inform that kind of strategy from a banking perspective. So more to come for sure.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate it. I know it's a very new topic, new technology, but it is fast and furious, and it's coming our way. Our consumers and the audience seem to have a lot of interest in understanding the different aspects of it. So I do appreciate the comment. Eric, any thought on that? You did mention, the cross-border activities with helping Ukraine. Any thoughts around using crypto as an asset for cross-border type of payments?
Well, yeah, I think there are some cool companies today that even provide a service where you're able to, Western Union think, but much less transaction fees, and it can instantly get fees from one user to another across the world. And we have seen this application for some of those. If I can move to actually the earlier question, so I was thinking about the FIs and the disruption piece, or the just and how they can play a role here. I think Mastercard and if I can say Visa have done a good job of kind of adopting the space, seeing what's the role that we can play as a company in this space. And I think banks are doing the same and looking at how can we provide value for this space? Where can our services fit? And I think that part is that's what I think people should be educating themselves and then deciding this is how we want to enter the space and this is how we want to support the space. If it's just buying and selling and holding, but I think it's probably going to end up being something more than just that at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Louis, any final thoughts? I know we are at time. Any final thoughts on the topic?
No, I really just want to indicate that, remember, as Canadians, we have some large banks, very relatively conservative banks compared to other regions. And so I think we, as consumers, we want to maintain that security that we're used to with these banks, and it'll take time for them to sink their teeth into this stuff. So that's my perspective of where we are relative to where our big banks sit in their positioning around this type of technology.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely appreciate the thought. That's certainly interesting. Any final thoughts, Eric, Suk?
Well, I'm sure then next year when we will be talking about this would look very different.
I'm very sure of that. Yes. So with that, we are at time. I would like to thank the panelists and the audience for joining us. As Suk mentioned, when we join next year on the topic, I hope that there will be a lot of deltas that we can discuss and look forward to it. It's certainly an interesting topic. And thank you all so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great day.